My project is to work with lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender survivors of domestic violence. I work with them by, of course, direct legal representation, but there's also a policy advocacy part and community outreach and education. So I represent people in family court, I do some immigration stuff as well, and you know, with the policy stuff, there's a lot of LGBT folks, when they are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people, in trying to access services for domestic violence, they face a lot of barriers. Everything from the laws not really being able to protect them to a lack of services in terms of things like counseling services, or even just really basically having someone who they can talk to who's a member of their community, or who can sort of identify and be an ally for them for those issues. So what I do is do some policy advocacy so we can try to change that climate, and that's done by reaching out to community-based organizations, talking to people really, conducting trainings at community-based organizations so that service providers, counselors, social workers, other attorneys have an understanding of some of the challenges that LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender survivors of domestic violence face. These include things like outing, or the threat of their sexual orientation and or gender identity being exposed when it's not really a part of, when it's not necessary or prematurely. Another part of my project is to educate community-based organizations on some of the challenges that they face regarding outing or the fear of re-victimization. LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender folks are sometimes concerned about calling the police and whether or not the police are going to respond appropriately. They're unsure about whether or not they're willing to talk to a judge or lawyers or outsiders generally about some of the violence that they've suffered. You know, it's one thing for somebody to call the police, but it's another thing to call the police and fill out a report about being the victim of a crime, and then going to the hospital and talking about injuries and talking about sexual orientation, about where you were touched, where you were abused. And then, of course, just initiating that legal process where you're going to see your abuser again and face them in court and try to get justice that way. So my project is to address LGBT domestic violence on a number of levels. What inspires me is I think that I'm inspired by the possibility of change. I'm inspired by the possibility of transformation of the legal system. I'm inspired by the connections that I make with community organizations. I'm inspired by all the people that I work with who do incredible things that are really humble people. I'm inspired, of course, by my clients and their stories and their strengths and their struggles and their ability to really transcend some of the violence and some of the abuse that they've suffered.